Okay, good morning, everyone. I hope you enjoy the opening music. It's 11:10, so we can get started. First, we would like to thank everyone for joining us, our panelists, as well as our students. My name is Vicky, your moderator for today. So the goal of this panel discussion is to help us get a better understanding of the career landscape of machine learning and get some career advice on how to prepare and succeed. The structure of our event today will consist of two parts. For the first part, we have prepared a list of questions to kickstart the panel discussion. This list of questions is based on the ones you submitted during registrations. We have sorted through them all and will be addressing as many as we can during the first part. The second part is a live Q&A session. So if any questions pop up for anyone, hold on to them, and our panelists will have a chance to answer them during the second half of the event. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce UTMIST a little bit. We are a student organization devoted to promoting a vibrant machine learning community on campus and connecting students with graduate students, professors, and industry in the field of machine intelligence. We ran a series of successful initiatives, including study groups, paper reading groups, guest speaker series, hackathon, and applied machine learning projects. Our team now consists of several grad and undergrad students and reaches a community of over 1,200 registered members. We also have a Discord server dedicated for all people interested in machine learning, so feel free to join us. We post machine learning resources. We also have help channel, mentorship program, projects, and many more. Okay, awesome. So without further ado, let's meet our panelists. We will start with a round of introductions in the order that's based on this poster. So we'll start with Milan first.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Vicky. First of all, it's great to be here and to meet everybody today. I'm very looking forward to this event. A little bit about myself. Currently, I'm a machine learning team lead at AltaML, which is a Canadian startup company doing a variety of machine learning and applied AI projects for private and public industry. And I've been in my role at AltaML for just over a year and a half now. And bit about my educational background. I actually come from more of an engineering background and electrical engineering, electrical and computer engineering. And I found my way to transition to the machine learning and artificial intelligence space. So I'm really happy to talk more about that, share some of my experiences, and hopefully, yeah, help somebody maybe guide their path as well into the field of AI and ML. So excited to be here, and I'll pass it over to Maddie.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here with the panelists and also the participants. So I'm Maddie. I'm an assistant professor of computer science in Concordia University. I did my PhD and postdoctoral fellow study at the University of Toronto in Multimedia Lab. So I do research on foundations of deep learning and computer vision algorithms with focused applications on computational pathology. So probably I can pass it to George.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, so I work in AltaML too, along with Milan. I work in product development as a product owner. And yeah, it's my educational background. I did my undergraduate at the University of Toronto in economics. And fun fact, I used to be in UTMIST as a VP of technical writing. So yeah, it's great to be back here again. I'll pass it on to Sonali.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to have this chance to speak with you all. I recently graduated from the engineering science program at UofT. Sorry, I think someone might be unmuted just in case they don't know. And After graduation, I started as a client engineering data scientist at IBM. And I'll pass off to Thomas.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Thomas. Super excited to meet everyone here. And thanks so much for the invite. I just graduated in engineering science at UofT this spring. So now I'm a PhD student in computer science at UofT, and meanwhile, I work at Wabi as a research scientist on autonomous trucking.
Awesome, thank you so much. And now I will stop sharing. And we'll get into the first part of this panel discussion. And yeah, let me just spotlight everyone. Oh, there's so many people. Hard to find. Oh, where are you, Mazi?
Sorry, I'm here.
Okay, we got everyone. Great. Yeah, this is my first time doing it, so okay, that's me. Okay. Hello. Okay, thank you panelists for taking the time to join our event today. Now we'll move right into topic number 1. First, we will dive into your general experiences. So let's start with Milan again. And the first questions to kick us off is, what is your typical day like? What is your work-life balance like in a machine learning job? And how many hours a week do you usually work?
Yeah, thank you so much, Vicky. Great question. So I'll start by saying that my role as a machine learning kind of engineer developer has changed throughout my experiences and through various promotions. I'll say when I started off as sort of the junior ML dev kind of first level role, I was a lot more of an individual contributor. So as you can imagine, that typical lot more coding, being involved, having sort of a portion of a project that I'm assigned to, and then working on that, and then working with team members to collaborate, get my work checked, make sure it fits to the broader description of the project. So I would say it was kind of starting with that individual contributor. As I gained more experience and went throughout and started picking up a little bit more leadership roles, I would say that most of my work then has changed to that leading portion of now more doing client interactions, scoping requirements for a project, delegating tasks, leading teams, training more junior employees. But that was also kind of my from more individual contributor to more team lead management type role. Yeah, so that's some of the transitions there. And then in terms of my typical work-life balance, you know, I'm very fortunate that I have a pretty good work-life balance. On average, I do kind of the standard 40 hours a week. There are those odd times when, as you can imagine, crunch time in a project. And I think as everyone as a student knows, when you're approaching the end, then you might kind of have to start putting in a little bit more hours. On those weeks, I could see myself doing maybe about 44, 45, 46, kind of just approaching that 50-hour band. But typically that's only about a couple times a year towards the end of a project. Most of the time, I'm very fortunate to have the flexibility of even kind of selecting hours, working the schedule to my needs, as long as the team's on the same page and as long as the work is getting complete. Yeah, and then on top of that, I'll add, I do like learning outside, so I will invest some of my time outside of hours to do additional kind of reading, taking, online courses, things like that, just to kind of keep myself up with latest trends, things that I don't get to maybe do day to day. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Milan, for sharing your experiences. Next, we'll move on to Dorje. I know you're also working at UTML. Do you have similar experiences? What is your typical day like?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, on the question of work-life balance, yeah, it's like very similar to Milan. Like it's very well balanced. I think it's like your typical work week's like around 40 hours, but yeah, I mean, of course, there are some moments where you're working on a project where you have a client deliverable that's like urgent, and for that you would have to dish out more hours, which is, I think, it's for almost all companies, right? But yeah, work-life balance, it's pretty good. Typical day, it's interesting because in product it's really like how you make of it, and also like depending on what are your natural skill sets. There are some people that work in product that are more sales oriented, and so they are like naturally better at sales, and so they would work more closely with sales teams. Myself, like I'm sort of just exploring the different teams right now, and like how do you best, I guess, make a product that's suitable for a client based on working with not only developers but also with sales teams, and also with the client directly as well. And yeah, in terms of that perspective, like a typical day would be revolving around either like doing some sort of sales outreach, looking at lead generation for sales, looking into, I guess, brainstorming with ML developers and engineers on the product roadmap and the prototyping that's needed for it. And the third is really just keeping clients up to date. And yeah, that would be the ones. Thanks.
Thank you, Dorje. Next, we have Maddie. What is your typical day like? Is working in the academia different from working in the industry?
Yes. Well, I wish I had reduced my work hours to 40 per week, but it's not a possibility. My working day hours, like how does it look like? So as a faculty, you are obligated to divide. Basically, it's called 40-40-20. So 40% research, 40% teaching, and 20% like administrative activities. But obviously, if you have the the passion for the research, which I do, so like it's going to be mainly consumed on the research. So on a daily basis, I would say I have like my regular meetings with my students, the collaborating students, the collaborating labs. Also, I'm an academic advisor to a company. It's based in St. Jacob, Ontario, so who run digital pathology. So we have also like not a daily, but I would say like a weekly interactions with them. Now I'm the semester is approaching, so like I'm preparing like for a course. So and this is a new course. I'm like there's a lot of preparations are involved. Yeah, and whenever these big deadlines of the conference submissions are approaching, it's like almost like we don't have proper sleep until like we pass the submissions. So yeah, I would say roughly about that. But on top of that, it's so me as a side, as like as a personal investment, is the reading a lot of basically material, like the papers, the preparations of the plans for the students, and also writing up research grants, because I have to make them happy at the end of the day, right? Like somebody has to pay them, so like it needs to they need to get paid. So that's the ordinary life activity of a faculty usually is. So yeah, I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, thank you, Maddie, for sharing your experiences working in academia. Next, we have Sonali. Sonali, you recently graduated from UofT. What is your typical day like working at IBM as a new grad?
Yeah, thank you. So because I started about a month ago, right now I'm still in training. And interestingly, I'm not in technical training at the moment. My role is kind of similar to what Dorje was talking about earlier, where I work alongside a lot of sales individuals who prospect new opportunities. And being a part of the client engineering team, I will be working on building custom solutions for clients with IBM products that are tailored to their specific data sets. That's what I would be doing as a data scientist. But yeah, right now I'm actually doing sales training, even if I won't necessarily be doing a primarily sales role. And the reason for that is it is still a customer and client facing role. And so, if you're responsible for things like demoing, there is still a certain component of that where you need to be sort of able to communicate well with the customers and clients. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
That's pretty cool. Thank you, Sonali. Next, we'll move on to Thomas. So Thomas, your job is a little bit unique. You're working as a research scientist at UofT, and you're also doing a PhD at the CS department. So what is your typical day like? What is the work-life balance like?
Yeah, so it's kind of exactly, it's kind of unique is that I do my research at UofT and I do my courses at UofT. So on weekdays, like typically I work from mostly 10 to 6. I have like regular meetings to update the status of the project, for example, because like everyone in the lab basically has his or her own project, and we have like weekly meetings with supervisor to kind of like get feedback, talk about the project and things like that. And then we can choose to attend those meetings if, for attend other people's project meeting, right? If you feel like you're interested or it's kind of like related to your project. So aside from attending meetings and during my work, I typically every day I spend at least 1 hour reading papers, relevant papers. I do like analyze results from my previous experiments, for example, right? Thinking about like, for example, is this result somewhat expected, right? And I visualize to see like where it fails, for example. And I think about, how we can improve, brainstorm with like other colleagues, prototype like new design proposals, and validate again. It's kind of like a cycle. And then I guess starting like in September, I'll have like 2 courses as well at UofT. So on my weekends, I'll basically doing my coursework. Yeah.
Wow. So weekday you work and then weekend you do the coursework.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Thomas. Next, we'll move forward with different questions. We'll start with Milan again. How did you get interested in machine learning at the beginning? What did you do to stick to that interest, and what makes you go beyond a general interest?
Yeah, great question. So as I kind of mentioned in my introduction there, I started with a more traditional engineering background, started by studying electrical engineering. And I think that fueled kind of it was stemming from my natural interest in like technology field, in the STEM field, math, physics, engineering, so forth. And I think I naturally progressed to machine learning. I didn't take any formal courses, but a lot of the stuff I was doing was more on kind of that initial data analysis, advanced analytics, and some of my earlier roles as well as kind of like an analytics engineer working after school. Then that was kind of when I graduated, was really the start of kind of that rise of machine learning. It was the first course, I guess the first official course I took was Andrew Ng's machine learning, to start learning the theory, then doing my own research into it, started picking stuff up in roles. So that was my transition. I didn't do any formal education in it, but I think the problem solving mindset and the technical background, I think is very transferable. And then, as I kind of mentioned, I started doing the roles, working in the positions, and finding that whatever opportunity I had to jump into a machine learning project, I took it. And I started to design my own path that way myself. And that's what kind of led me into transitioning to a company like UTMIST that really has AI machine learning at their core, and then looking for opportunities within the company to keep expanding and growing. Yeah, and then interest, kind of as everybody mentioned, I think it's a passion for it. So even outside of my working hours, my regular, I always find time to look up articles, read the latest trends, what's going on, because it's such an ever evolving field. I think that's something that's also very excited about it, is that, we don't really know where it's going to go. There's still lots of new developments coming out. So I find that very, very exciting. And that's what keeps me driving forward.
Well, thank you, Milan. How about you, Dorje? What is your journey like? How did you get interested in machine learning, and what did you do to stick to that interest?
Yeah, I think my interest began when I was studying economics. I was exploring some different topics in economics, like from econometrics to behavioral economics, which is more like oriented to the psychology aspect of it. And it was interesting because a lot of the times, like with economics, is you're always trying to find the socially optimal sort of equilibrium for, like, let's say, like a policy decision that the government takes. And more so in traditional economics, there's a lot of assumptions that you have to make in order to simplify the model to make sure you actually understand it. And I was sort of thinking that, okay, like a lot of these assumptions, they can be wrong, because, you know, like in our day-to-day dynamic, like, you know, world, it's like a lot of these assumptions, they probably don't hold true. And so, like, I was just kind of thinking, like, what could you use? And like, I think it seems to be that machine learning, like, you know, accounting for large numbers of data, large amount of data sets, really, like, you know, you can account for thousands of variables that traditional economic models can't. And that's where sort of like my curiosity began. And then, you know, writing sort of medium articles for UTMIST as, like, you know, VP in technical writing, that sort of took it further. And then just kept doing there's a bit of an echo. Okay.
Yes, everyone, please remember to mute yourself.
Yeah, and also like just taking, like, you know, some courses on the side from Data Camp and Coursera, and that really like sort of bumped up the technical side. And then when I really came into the product aspect of ML, that was super interesting because you're sort of not really restricted to one industry. I mean, it can be a bad thing too, is because you can be way too spread out, but at the same time, it's interesting to see that there's so much, I guess, demand from the client side for you know, efficiency improvements that machine learning can deliver. And that's really where it ended up. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dorje. Next we have Maddie. How did you get interested in ML, and what makes you decide to pursue PhD and postdoc? And yeah.
Sure. It's quite interesting that when I think how I got interested to this to this field, it actually roots back to like my first master's in University of Tehran, when I did like classical machine learning, pattern recognition, computer vision. These are all like, you know, old school way of doing, like, you know, processing the data, trying to develop algorithm to recognize, like, you know, the representation of the data. Yeah, at that time, like when I was like, you know, switching from one project to another, I noticed that like is there any way that we can generalize, like, you know, from one application to another? Because like when I process, like, you know, a given image, type of the image, then I go to another image, like things are like similar, but still my algorithms keep failing because I have to tweak the design in a way that it can actually process this a similar perhaps structure or representation to come out with, like, you know, as you know, the results that I want. Well, I moved on. I did my master's in iris recognition at that time, and I like was one of the actually the participants in collecting a data set. So I had a bit of like, you know, passion with collecting data from the individuals, and then I moved on. I came to Canada to you know, pursue my PhD. And then at that time, I was more into like mathematical image processing. So mainly at that time, it was the compressed sensing, compressed video sensing was the hype. So deep learning didn't kick in. And while, you know, still like, you know, catching up like with the whole thing of the you know, the PhD studies, then this deep learning kicked in, right? So like our hardware facilities becomes more sophisticated, data was well enough available, and then like then the paper from the Jeff Hinton and Alex Krzyzewski hit they basically won the prize back into 2012 for the ImageNet. So it was basically the first alarm that, like, you know, yes, this perhaps we need to go back to our studies from the AI and the neural network, and try to see, like, you know, what else, like, you know, what's really happening. And obviously I developed the interest in the past, and so I started to actually invest by my own. My PhD did little with basically, you know, the deep learning and the AI. And then I eventually start to get attracted to it. So toward the end of my PhD, I started to notice that, like, if I want to continue, I definitely have to get into this thing. So there was a transition period, I would call. Studying when I started my postdoc with the collaboration of the Huron Digital Pathology, so the data was coming from the medical side. So like I saw the perfect synergy. Yes, there's a medical application there, which I have the passion, right? And also, like, within my family, people have been the victim of the cancer. So I saw a perfect synergy, how I can actually get involved into that and like try to see I can be some sort of a help to the society. So yeah, that's how my interest got developed.
Thank you, Maddie, for sharing your journey. How about you, Thomas? I know you major in robotics engineering and minor in AI. How did you get interested in machine learning at the beginning? And what did you do to stick to that interest?
Yeah, so yeah, first of all, I got introduced to machine learning in second year of undergrad by a course at U of T called APS 360. I believe it was like one of the mandatory courses to get an AI minor. So I took it during the summer, and I guess it was the only course that I took that summer, and so I got plenty of time to play around with like the course project and the labs and so on. So I think my team worked on a food detector on an image, and it was the moment that you actually see the model you implemented works on detecting food rather than giving random boxes that intrigued me. And so, because like everything I worked on before was like pretty deterministic, you kind of expect what the code is going to do, right? And then if it's what you expected, that means it works, it does the job. If it's not, then probably means there's some bug in the code that you need to debug. And then machine learning is quite different. Sometimes like the model outputs could be surprising, either like surprisingly good or surprisingly bad. But it's kind of interesting to guess why the model performs that way. So that's how my interest develops.
That's great. Thank you, Thomas. Next for Sonali, we are going to change it up a little bit for you. What skills and experiences do you feel are the most important to prepare you for this career that you can't necessarily learn from school?
That's a really great question, and it's a little bit of a difficult one because, you know, when you talk about learning at school, I would say it doesn't just happen in the classroom. If you do join certain extracurriculars, I think you gain a lot of skills there, which are extremely useful. I think there are certain intangible things like, you know, being able to work really well on a team, being able to communicate well, whether it's, you know, with your teammates or with people that you're trying to explain your algorithm or solution to. I think those are some incredibly important skills that are useful if you're a machine learning engineer or a data scientist. You know, with respect to, I think something that Thomas was just saying earlier, you know, it's interesting when something unexpected happens and you have to try and figure out why that is. That's extremely important, I think, in industry applications when you're trying to explain to someone whether or not they should use this for whatever business purpose they have, because they want to be able to understand why it's happening. So I think that is probably one really important skill that you can learn, you know, outside of the classroom. Maybe look a little bit into things like explainable AI, see how, you know, different applications of AI work by joining different extracurricular teams that use those types of algorithms. So yeah, I think those kinds of skills are really important in the field.
Thank you, Sonali. Next, we'll move to Milan. What are some essential skills that prepare you for this career?
Yeah, for sure. I think honestly, Sonali gave the best answer to that question. That the exact same answer would have been in my mind. The biggest ones that I found in the role really are communication and teamwork and collaboration is very vital, especially because typically within industry and projects, you're dealing with a very multidisciplinary team of people. For example, I work a lot of times with Dorje on certain projects, and it's two different sort of fields, and you have to be able to communicate with one another, bridge those gaps in order to work together to deliver the best solution possible. So that's that collaboration and teamwork. And then the communication, really, especially if you're dealing with a client-facing role, a lot of times that stakeholder or the client on the other side that you need to convince or kind of sell your idea to, they don't necessarily have the same level of technical knowledge. So you need to be able to really add those layers of abstraction to what your solution is, and still be able to convincingly present your idea, all the challenges with it, in a way that somebody at a decision-making position can use that to make the right decision going forward without worrying about all the details. So it's really like being able to translate between different stakeholder groups and different people. So yeah, I think those are probably the two most essential that I found outside of all the technical stuff that you, of course, still need to know in depth. Yeah.
Thank you, Milan. How about you, Madi? What skills and experience do you feel are the most important to prepare you for this career?
Right. What I like about the AI and the data science, the terminology of the data science that I really like is the blend of like, three different things. You have basically a problem in mind. So there's some sort of the inductive bias to that tailors the problem. Then you have to have the software skills, right? Software developing skills. And then also, I would say this the data where it's actually kicking in. So you need to it's a blend of these. And then like development algorithms, the optimization, the machine learning models, and everything all together. So there's a synergy that exists within all of these that makes it all as basically the data science workflow, right? So what it is interesting about this is that you might not be actually able to catch within just taking a few courses from the university. You say I'm a data science. No, it's not going to work like that. It gives you the the initial kickstart, but it's not going to be enough. So obviously it's the experience and the science that you develop, and so it's going back to the medical science, right? So the medical doctors try to interact with, get experience with the patients, so they learn, and then they try to digest that information. So again, comes back again, and then try to do the same, right? So it's a similar thing kind of happens in data science, that you deal with data, you learn from data, and try to see whether you have developed as a means of algorithmic development or the processing, would it work better or not, or maybe you have to fine tune it. So step back, try to better understand. So it's going to take some time. So what I would say is that if you deal with more projects and with more people, you're going to learn more and more, and then you have to you're going to eventually master your art at some point. And then on top of these communications, I would say is the first key point that I would say. If you're interacting with the team, you have no choice. You're going to deal with it. When you're in the AI business, the data science business, you're not going to work alone. You're going to work with a lot of people. And then you got to be very good at communicating with people, try to understand them, try to see what is your role, and basically make that harmony in a way that you become a basically useful member of that team.
Yeah, thank you, Madi. Thomas, so what are some important skills people should focus on to kickstart their career in the ML industry?
Yeah, first of all, I really agree with Madi on basically you need to kind of accumulate and digest your experience. And on top of that, I believe it is basically the ability to, I will argue, to plan things ahead and also think backwards. So basically, for example, you make your plan for yourself in the long run so that you can gradually step towards your goal, right? So for example, I want to be a researcher in industry. How do I qualify for that? You probably need a few years of industry experience beforehand, right? Then I probably need to find you think backwards. I probably need to find an internship somewhere between the semesters, right? So that, but then how do I get into that internship job? You probably need this course to take in, for example, in first year, that course second year, and then you probably need to work on some side projects to kind of accumulate your experience. So I guess that is the process. I will feel and also skills and experience that really prepare you for the career.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. So the next question is for Dorje. Some of our audience are from first or second year, and they want to know how to get started on machine learning. So what's your process like? Are there any resources you recommend to help get started on learning about machine learning?
I think, yeah, I think the most obvious one is like, yeah, UTMIST, you guys do a great job. You know, you guys have a lot of great resources, all the meetups and all the paper reading, etc., and even all the projects that are being offered. I think that's a fantastic place to start. I think it's also good to keep in mind like what type of profession you want to go into. Like I can tell you for sure that like, you know, going into product is very different to going into like I would say a more technical based role, like a full proper like, you know, full engineer. Just because there's going to be so many different facets of the job that are different. That like you'll be a lot more sales oriented. You'll be like your communication skills will have to be really, really good. And I guess it's just to say that. But of course, like you don't have to be so fixed on like what profession you want to start in the beginning, like because that can also change over time, of course, right? But in terms of resources, yeah, I think like any form of networking, like it will never hurt to do as much networking as possible to like, you know, reach out to any one of us on the panel right now. That's probably going to be a great idea. Yeah, and also doing like research on what kind of company you want to join, because I think like the type of skills you need, for example, for a startup versus a scale up versus like a FANG company is going to be like quite different. For example at AltaML for product oriented skills, like I'll just be very transparent. Like I have to do a lot of sales just because this is just there is a sales team, but then there like resources are stretched, right? So you may have to take on some hats that you may be a bit different to like your core responsibility, which like in my case is product development. So it's just different. But at the same time, if you see it in a positive way, like I get to interact a lot with different clients. I get to see the sales process too, which is extremely like exciting. And it's very interesting how that side of the business works too, right? So whereas like I can't speak for FANG companies, but I'm pretty sure it's a lot more of a specialized position. Yeah, I think that's how I would put it.
Thank you, Dorje. Our next question is related to job search and applications, and we will start with Sonali. So for a new grad with only university project level experiences in ML, what is your suggestions for navigating job search and applications?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. And I'll be honest in saying that a lot of data science and machine learning jobs out there are usually going to say that they require a master's degree or above. So, you know, one of the things that I did was I filtered for the ones that didn't. Sometimes if you have maybe extensive research experience and you've like, you know, published a paper or something like that, you may be able to still go ahead and try and apply to the ones that do have that requirement because they're usually a bit more research focused. So don't let that hold you back. But, you know, I hadn't done those things. So I looked at LinkedIn, for instance, was a very big resource for me. I looked for sort of more junior machine learning, engineering, and data science jobs that did only have the bachelor's degree requirement. Some of them will say, yes, we prefer someone to have a master's degree, but again, it doesn't really harm you to take the couple of minutes to sort of rejig your resume and submit that. So, you know, just definitely go ahead and apply to whatever fits sort of your skill set. In terms of other things, you know, something I think that Madhi mentioned earlier is, you know, for data science, for instance, you do have a couple of different skill sets that you kind of need to showcase. And one of them is software engineering skills in general. And so the internships that I did were primarily software engineering related. So even though I only have, you know, a bachelor's degree, I do have a couple of internships in software engineering to show. And I also have some coursework in machine learning since I did the machine intelligence major. Then I've also got some projects through extracurriculars that I've worked on. So put together, you know, those kind of can showcase, if you have sort of different pieces that you put together, if they showcase that full sort of complement of skills that you're looking at, that is one of the things that I would recommend that you kind of look at when you're doing a job search. Make sure that you kind of check as many of those boxes as you can to showcase those skills that you have. And yeah, I would say other than that, you know, LinkedIn, career fairs, attending networking events, speaking to people like us, coming to this, looking at UTMIST, all of those are very useful things to do when you're job hunting.
Yeah, thank you, Sonali. Those are some great places to start. LinkedIn, networking events, career fair. So next we will move to Milan. What will your suggestion be for navigating job search and applications when someone only has a university project level experience?
Yeah, definitely. I think all the answers we've heard so far are great and ones I would recommend, especially the ones around networking events and attending company virtual hiring events. A lot of companies now are also hosting those type of things where they'll have specific kind of roles they hire for and they'll host their own hiring event. So keep on a lookout on those. If you have particular companies in mind that you're interested in, follow up with their maybe recruiters or their schedules to see what's available. And then in terms of just getting more hands-on experience, I would say building up your own portfolio of projects, like specifically using tools like GitHub is a great source for this. Organizing your projects and making sure you keep things, you kind of follow some of the coding standards like documentation, things like that, because that's very attractive. Not just that you're able to solve a particular problem, but can you organize your thoughts? Can you keep everything nicely? Because that's, a lot of companies, that's one key thing they do look for is people who are very good at communicating these ideas. That, and then also try to contribute maybe to any open source projects. I think one of the great things about machine learning, data science, and AI is that a lot of the advancements are because of open source tools and products out there. So get involved in something that you're maybe interested in, a package like sklearn or one of the other frameworks, and see if you can contribute, even as to do code reviews and find bugs and make changes. That can go a long way as something that you can add to your resume, that you have experience dealing with these types of at least structures and projects. Yeah, if you don't have any formal experience so far, I think those are all great places to start.
Thank you, Milan. Great suggestions. There are definitely a lot of resources online. Yeah, and I know that in addition to internship, many of our students are also interested in research. So Mari, for someone with only university project experience, what is your suggestions for finding research opportunity?
Right. Sure. Well, but based on my experience for the past 5 years, so what do we do at Multimedia Lab is that we actually hire usually a year now. It's actually a dozen of candidates. So they're usually third year, sometimes fourth year, depends on the qualifications, right? So one thing actually comes to my mind is that over the past years that I get experience is that I work with the undergrad students. It's an amazing actually opportunity for both undergrads as well as me as basically the supervisor, because I learn a lot from the process. It's the early development of their their mindset. So it gives me the opportunity to dig in and to see how are they thinking. To find basically, so for myself, I'm going to give you an example, how I approach it, and then probably the students can actually see it, how they can use this, put it into to practice. So from a previous successful candidates, from the previous years, I asked them that if they know there are any friends or any through their network that they are some talented students they can actually recommend to us, because believe it or not, word of mouth is very, very strong. So I would actually take that very seriously. Yes, you can attend to the job fairs, you can attend and a lot of people actually find basically good jobs, hands down, no questions asked. But my experience is that when we get into touch with a student that has been recommended from our previous basically collaborating students, which have been very successful in our team, turns out to be successful as well. So I really like that approach. And that's not the only approach that I have, because we put the advertising post and we get dozens of a lot of basically applicants every year. But also for the students, maybe they can actually talk to their, peers, talk to their, colleagues, their friends, to see like what kind of projects they're working on. If some kind of like, if it catches their interest, maybe they can, ask them to a favor to talk to their, other friends or supervisors, that if they're looking for like, a research intern, the interns. So that kind of like, cross-linking could probably help. For research side, I would say like, if somebody wants to get into like, graduate studies for the research on computer science field, it's all about like, you get engaged with like, at least like, few projects before you graduate your undergrad to get experience, hands-on experience on like, different topics. And if you can show that you have a track record in research, like publishing papers, contributing those to those open source libraries that Milan was mentioning, are all actually very positive things, which I think actually broaden the horizon of these teams to get into good research, positions later on, moving to other universities.
Thank you, Mari. So yeah, definitely reach out to your friends and see if there's any interesting projects going on. And that's one way to find research opportunity. So our next question is for Thomas. I know you recently graduated. So looking back to your undergraduate years, which experience do you think helped you the most in landing this PhD and research scientist position at UofT?
Yeah, so I guess it was the PEY internship experience that helped me the most. So for my PEY internship, which is between my third and fourth year, I spent a year at Huawei's autonomous driving lab in Markham. So over there, I had a chance to work as a research intern. So not only that I developed the domain knowledge that prepared me for example, grad school, also I had a chance to work with all the researchers and also, have my own project that work towards a publication there. So I guess that was like an invaluable experience for me to do research during the internship. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas, for sharing that. And Sonali, which experience do you think helped you the most in landing this job at IBM?
It's really hard to pick just one, but I would say also, so I didn't do a formal PEY, I just took a year off and did shorter internships within that. I would say that experience really helped me sort of gain industry experience really, and software engineering in particular, because that is something that I think is a little bit harder to do in the classroom when you're working on projects. I think something that Milan mentioned earlier was, having good, coding and documentation practices. Things like that aren't usually what you're focusing on when you're trying to meet this like really short deadline for your school projects. But when you're sort of doing an internship at a software company, that's extremely important. You need to know how to use GitHub well. Those kinds of things are what people look for when you're joining an industry job for sure. So that experience really helped expose me to sort of best practices in industry. And other than that, I would say some of the extracurricular projects that I did with, say, I think Neurotech UofT was one of them. That really helped give me an idea of all of the various amazing ways in which you can use machine learning. And those experiences helped me talk about some of the ways I might envision my skills being useful in various contexts when I did interviews. So yeah, I would say those were two really useful experiences for me.
Thank you, Sonali. And yeah, it is really a accumulations of experiences. You start with something small and then you build it up from there. Yeah, thank you. So next we'll talk about some possible career paths in machine learning and answer the very popular questions. Do you need a master's or PhD to break through in AI? And we'll start with Dorje. Yep, so what are some possible career paths for people with your skills and experiences? And do you need a master or PhD?
So this is a bit of a tricky question, because in product, there are some people on my team that are like extremely qualified in terms of academics. Like my boss himself, like he has like a master's in neuroscience, but it's, you know, I feel like it is a definite plus, but it's not a necessary requirement to work in product, but it definitely has a interesting element that you can bring to the table. Yeah, it's like even at AltaML, I think that there are a lot of individuals that do have master's degrees, but at the same time, it's like they're still very open to, you know, it's like everybody still collaborates together, whether you have an advanced degree or not. I guess to answer your question, like I don't think it's necessary to work in product with a master's degree, but it does help if you bring a level of subject matter expertise in like in a particular industry. Let's say like if you have some subject matter expertise in let's with the example of like energy, for example, like if you have a subject matter expertise in even in drilling, that can be extremely helpful when if we're designing like an ML product for a drilling company, right? So it really is a lot of different backgrounds that can be very interesting. It just depends on the company position, like how are they positioned in the market that they're selling to. Yeah, I mean, I think I can only speak for product, but in product, I've seen individuals with a variety of experiences. It doesn't have to be just like a PhD in computer science. It could be very different things. Like even one of my coworkers, she's doing a master's in systems design engineering at Waterloo, and she brings a lot of great insights to the table. And yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, Dorje. How about you, Milan? What are some possible career paths for you? And do you need master or PhD degrees?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start with the first part of that question, possible career paths. I think I'll start kind of really focused on my experience, because as we see from this panel, everybody has a very wide range of different experiences and different career paths. So first, always keep that in mind. It really depends on what your goals are, what your ambitions are for yourself, because it will vary. There's no one simple answer to any of these. But for myself personally, I took that kind of path initially starting as an individual contributor. And typically what I found, with at least the way AltaML is structured and a couple of other companies that I do have friends that work in, there's sort of two streams when you start off in a technical role. You can continue down that technical path of, you kind of traditional ways, become like a senior engineer, then a principal, staff, principal, going up to sort of fellow. And typically those roles consist of you really kind of being that deep technical subject matter expert. And in those types of roles, typically I do see people with master's and PhD level degrees that typically excel in that path. Then on the kind of other path sort of that I went on is that more management, leadership, kind of people leading path, where you still kind of build up that technical experience, but then you also need to be very good at communication, organizing teams, working with people, and you have more direct responsibility of guiding other people's paths. Those ones, I would say that kind of what Dorje said there, it's not necessarily required, but it doesn't hurt you if you have it. It just gives you a little bit more insights into certain areas or more kind of very unique skills that you can expand on. So I'll kind of stop there. Those are the two kind of streams I'm seeing. Do you want to go that technical route, or do you want to go more of the people management? And I would say for what degrees, what specialties, it really depends on you and what your goals are. But I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on this. I know it's a hot topic for debate. So
thank you, Milan. So Mari, how about the academia? What are some possible career paths in academia?
Right. Like all of the panels have touched actually very interesting, like, the topics. So as you can see, there are different pillars to that, right? So if I want to bring some structure to that, and it's the same thing with the academia, if you want to move on to like a higher level of the academia, is that first of all, you need to be able to probably assess yourself, like, what is your level and what is the level of the knowledge that you have gained, right? So if you have enrolled, let's say I'm enrolling to my undergrad studies, and then the curriculum has been designed in a way that it gives me the opportunity to build up on that, right? But sometimes you see that, no, that's the curriculum does not give you that. Like, so you need to actually build your own. So by engaging the open, basically the source stuff, the projects, the intern opportunities. On top of that, online courses, you build on your own basically resume to make yourself qualified for the job that you're looking at right in the future. So I think it kind of like becomes the problem of assessing yourself and to see if you're qualified or not, and then build to make yourself qualified for it. And the other one is the third party. So like, no, what is that? So is it the master's that you want to go, or like, is it the job, a particular job that you're interested at, and what did they look for? And then you try to basically match. So if somebody's interested to pursue the high-level master's or like the PhD, well, obviously is like the more you go, it's going to get narrowed down. And so you need to become more specialized and specialize more and more. So you can probably start to doctorine your philosophy on that topic. So that's why it's called PhD, right? The Doctor of Philosophy. Yeah, I think, and one thing just to basically touch base on the comments that the question that you asked, whether you need a master's or PhD to get into like ML jobs. Again, it really depends like how much you have built during your undergrad. If you see that you're comfortable enough, then maybe you can just move on and apply like to those the star careers that you think that it's going to give you, like it's going to shine on your resume. You're going to enjoy that in future. But if not, probably enrolling to a master's would give you a bit of basically, it's going to relax you, give you more basically years so you can again experience more and more. So hopefully at some point you feel way comfortable that you can go and like let's say hire them like big corporates that you think that you need to.
Thank you, Maddie. Next, we'll move on to Sonali. What are some possible career paths for you? And do you think you will need a master's degree or a PhD degree in the future, maybe?
Sure. So at the moment, of course, for the job that I'm in, I don't require a master's degree, but it depends. Like there are a couple of options for myself in terms of where I see myself going after this. If I do decide to continue in this kind of a role and kind of progress at the company I'm at in similar roles, or potentially go into people management, I may not need a master's degree, but it would really help if I continue to get more technical and try to go to more senior technical roles. On the other hand, if you look at master's degrees in this field, there are usually like two types even. Some of them will be a little bit more sort of profession focused and professional skills focused, and the others will be a lot more research focused and require a thesis, for instance. Personally, I do have quite a few research interests that are a little bit more esoteric, and you won't necessarily find them as often in industry jobs. For instance, I really like looking at papers on how machine learning and AI is used to model moral reasoning and human judgment and things like that. So for those kinds of things, if I'd like to go further in that area, yes, that probably would require a master's degree in a much more research focused field. So those are sort of two pathways that I could go down. And if you see yourself thinking about what you want to do, I would say really look at maybe the differences between the type of skill sets required in more senior technical jobs, if that's where you want to see yourself, or more senior management of technical people jobs, or potentially more sort of esoteric research focused things that you'll almost only see in academia. Those are a couple of different pathways that will definitely require sort of different skill sets as you go along.
Thank you, Sonali. Next, we have Thomas. I know you're doing a PhD. What are some possible career paths for you?
Yeah, so first of all, yeah, I'm working towards a PhD, and there are many types of machine learning related jobs in the market. For example, there's like engineering side, right? There's also research side. I would argue that probably the research side, research related machine learning jobs require a master or PhD degree simply because they want you to demonstrate that you have, work on a project, you have your independent thoughts, right? And then you could contribute, you have somewhat of success in that project. So as long as you can show some of your, for example, track records or of publication, for example, right? That degree, right? That master or PhD degree is kind of like a way to verify this.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. And kind of continue with that questions. Machine learning is a fast-moving field. So how do you stay updated? Do you have any specific books or magazine or podcasts that you recommend to the audience? So that question, yeah, Thomas.
So I think it really depends on the topic, because machine learning is quite broad, right? There's, for example, NLP, there's computer vision, because I mainly work for computer vision, so I can talk about that. So I think in computer vision, there are quite a few like big conferences every year. For example, there's one CVPR every year, and there's like ICCV and ECCV, which is like every 2 years. So I would highly recommend like reading all the interesting papers like coming out in those conferences, and stay tuned for machine learning that way. And also, for example, for specific tasks that you're interested in, for example, object detection or segmentation, there are a few like benchmarks, interesting benchmarks in the field, and you can look at the leaderboard. It's like a new entry there. What method are they using? Is it published, right? You read those papers and see if you get inspired by those researchers. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas. How about you, Maddie? How do you stay updated with the field?
Yeah, the field is very fast-paced. I mean, the papers published last year in some projects, or like in some topics, they might be even considered like old. So you need to definitely read a lot of papers. And as Thomas was mentioning, that attending these big conferences of the AI, like depends on what kind of, the topic that you are working on. It doesn't matter if you're like, graduate or like, working for a big corporates, like nowadays we see like there's a fair balance between the academia and like, big machine learning and AI, corporates that, they publish papers there as well. So attend those conferences, try to interact with people, attend poster sessions, attend, talks. All you need is to basically hear the keywords and get the idea of like where this is getting applied, and then you're going to basically search for it and find a relevant paper and get into that. So and probably even more like sometimes there are good actually blog posts from like good AI practitioners, good data scientists. Yeah, that's like how I usually try to keep myself updated and like interact with my students, because they are the frontiers, right? Like when we have basically a big project, a big topic in mind, obviously we know that this big topic is going to last for at least for several years. So the students go and like find new stuff, and then like we communicate, and I start to learn from them a lot actually. So it broadens my like it arm lengths my way of like getting to a lot of the exposing to a lot of different topics. Yeah.
Thank you, Maddie. And we also see some very good answer in the chat. People mentioning Twitter, and also 10-minute paper, 10 paper per minute. Wow. Yep. So those are some great resources. Next questions is for Dorje. So what are some points to keep in mind when interviewing for machine learning jobs?
So I guess I can only speak on the part of the product team. So I think with product, it's such a field that literally anybody, to be very honest, can work in product. It's just that but anybody can work in product, but everybody has sort of like shared goals. And those goals are that, can you prove out a return on your investment for that product? Can you build out a product roadmap? Can you effectively communicate client needs? So like the pillars are sort of consistent. However, you have these different colors of, like some people may be coming from neuroscience, some people may be coming from drilling, some people may be coming from systems design engineering. So everybody comes in with their own sort of special, sort of unique background, but the pillars still remain consistent. And can you still deliver on those pillars? That's it's sort of like $1 million question, right? That's why it's such a competitive industry. But in terms of keeping in mind for like interviewing, if you're interviewing for a product owner, it's sort of you will be more client facing. So I would say that you would have to brush up on sort of your sort of your client facing skills, along with some technical skills. You don't have to be a technical expert at all. But there are product owners that do have like, for example, a master's in computer science and have worked in technical projects. There's actually like one that's my colleague. He comes from a technical background and he's working in product too. But it's very hard to answer the question. Essentially, I think your best bet would be to do like your due diligence on the company that you're applying for. Are they like a startup? As I was mentioning before, are they a startup? Are they a scale up? Are they like something as the size of a FANG company? Because each like those different types of companies will require different, I guess, sort of different skill sets too. As I was mentioning earlier, like a startup, you may be required to do more sales than you would like to. Whereas in a FANG company, I would assume that you'd be a lot more specialized. So yeah, sorry if that doesn't really answer your question, but it's a bit of a mixed bucket.
Thank you, Dorje. Yeah, it really depends on the company you're applying to, and you need to prepare differently. Sonali, so we know you have multiple research and internship experiences. What is your process like preparing for interviews?
Yeah, so again, it's very, very specific to the type of role I'm applying for. For instance, after first year, I applied for a research internship. The process for that was definitely very different to, say, applying for the full-time role that I have right now. So I would say the first thing would be to identify sort of what type of role it is that you're looking at and what the standard interview process is like for that. For somewhat more of like a lab-based research opportunity, your resume will really have to be more like a CV and things like that. When you're interviewing, sort of knowing what types of skills that they're looking for. Usually you'll be speaking with like a PhD student of the professor or something like that. So of course they will be focused on things like your research skills and the type of projects that you've done that are a bit more research focused. So that's sort of one possible interview style that you may have. When it comes to industry, well, honestly, the types of jobs I applied for include, general software engineering, machine learning engineering, and data science. Usually, almost always, if it's an industry job, it starts with, some sort of a coding take-home exercise that you have to do. And that can vary quite wildly. I've had, your standard lead code type questions show up. I've had SQL-based questions show up. I've had more exploratory data analysis show up, which was, I think, more relevant to the job that I applied for right now. After that stage, you definitely want to identify or ask your recruiter what type of interview you'll go through during the process. If you're going through a technical interview, you may want to know, is it, your standard lead code type interview? Sometimes they do that for machine learning jobs as well. Is it something that is more machine learning focused? In that case, you definitely will want to brush up on your machine learning programming skills. It may be something generic, like just using an out-of-the-box algorithm from sklearn. Sometimes you may be asked to code some sort of like a basic deep learning thing from scratch. I've had people who are friends of mine have to do that. So it really varies a lot. And one of the most important things I'd say before you prepare, there's so many things to cover. Definitely speak with your recruiter, ask them sort of what the interview process is like. And beyond just the technical, there are almost always going to be some sort of quote unquote behavioral interview questions. So definitely identify some of the key experiences in your life that you think have given you skills that would prepare you for the job you're looking for. I tend to make sort of like a list of different experiences that I've had, and I ask myself, what have I learned from these experiences? What have I accomplished in them? And that list really helps me when I'm asked specific questions in behavioral interviews. I can be like, okay, I've had this experience that relates to the skill they're asking me about, and I can bridge those gaps when I'm answering those questions. So those are the kind of the different steps that I take when I'm preparing for interviews for these kinds of jobs.
Thank you, Sonali. And thank you everyone for sharing your experiences. That's all the questions for part 1 of the event. And now we're moving to the second part of the event, which is the live Q&A sessions. So if you have any questions, please send it to the chat. And let me share my PowerPoint again. Oh, yeah, Lavinia, could you help me to kind of go through the questions in the chat?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
So the first question is, how would you recommend getting more involved with research as an undergraduate student?
So research, maybe Thomas, could you talk about this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess for my personal experience, when I first, when I was about to find my first research at university, I was just cold emailing professors. Like I think I cold emailed like 20 professors, and a few got a reply, and I got interviewed. And I think my biggest advice is to kind of like build a professional web page for yourself to kind of like illustrate your past research projects, or a kind of like past course projects, make it fancier but more professional, so that professors can actually see what you're doing and then take you on for research projects. And second advice is that get in touch with like the grad students in the lab. Sometimes, because like professors are really busy and they may not see the email that you send, you can actually send to his or her like grad students to ask for referral, for example, to get involved in the research projects.
Thank you, Thomas. How about you, Madi? What would your recommendation?
Yes, this is a great question. So I'll complement what Thomas mentioned. So I'll cover it from two the different aspects. One is that majority of the research labs, they prepare job advertising posts for the lab research internship positions. That's usually at UofT. It's during the summertime. So if you're looking for research position internships, so you should basically keep looking at these advertising, the flyer positions. We post our advertising position every year around like January, February timeframe to hire the students. So that's one of the opportunities that you can get involved. But on top of that, like the professors and the grad students, through the professors, as Thomas was mentioning, they look for talents regardless, whether this is summer or like during the year. So if you do have the passion of like doing research, and if you think that you're actually you're good at it, or you want to basically eager to learn, then you can just basically approach the the lab, the members, the grad students, or like the professor, and they will guide you through the proper channel to work with the relevant peoples, right? And it's all about basically the availability of the time that you want. So you really need to see that, what do you want out of this? How much time you can invest on this? And then based on that, you take it from there.
Thank you, Madi. And we also have two questions related to internship. So how to land the first internship in tech company. And also someone asked, how would you recommend finding internship positions? I think someone mentioned LinkedIn earlier. How does that work? Is there anything else you'd recommend? I think Sonali, you mentioned LinkedIn previously. So how does that work?
Sure. So yeah, I would say with LinkedIn, there are a couple of filters you can usually apply. If it's an internship you're looking for, you can use those keywords when you're doing a search. Another potential way to find out about internships would be university career fairs or recruiting events on campus. So there are usually, people who will look for internship students at those events because it is like a university that they're coming to. Another possible way to go about things is identify certain companies that you're interested in and look at their careers pages. They'll usually have an internship page if they do internships, and that would also be one potential way to go about it. There are a couple of other sort of smaller job boards out there. I can't recall the specific ones off the top of my head, but if you sort of try and look those up, just look up, internship job boards, Toronto area, those will usually tend to have a lot of opportunities as well for when you're looking for those outside of your sort of university co-op portals, for instance. And to be honest, like a lot of networking events or opportunities really help too. The way that I found my first industry internship was through a hackathon, and I took my resume to a hackathon. I sort of made a really strong connection with one of the sort of industry mentors that was there, and I ended up landing an interview and that job. So I would say those are a couple of slightly more non-traditional ways of going about it, but definitely don't underestimate the power of different types.
Thank you, Sonali, and thank you, Milan. I saw you shared an internship opportunity in the chat. Yeah, Milan, do you have any recommendations for landing the first internship in tech companies?
Yeah, I kind of threw a plug in there for AltaML, but it's something I strongly recommend. This was actually the program that I used to transition myself into more of an ML focused role. So we have a 4-month internship called the Applied AI Lab. And it's partnership, it's with industry partners, 4 different companies that we actually work on a project, like a real life use case with them. And we're actually, these internships are not just specifically for students. There's a lot of people that do it that are sort of looking for a career transition. So it's open to any professionals. I passed on the link there, but if anybody wants more information, I'm always happy to connect and talk about it more, pass more information. So yeah, just one kind of other resource that's available out there.
Thank you, Milan. And I see someone asked about salaries, and I think for salaries, you can always search online and you'll be able to find the average salary for the job you're looking for. And someone asked, is understanding the math side of ML algorithm important for ML job?
I would take that question. Is that okay? Yeah, sure. Yes, and definitely yes. So let me back up, like to just basically remind us that we go to undergrad studies either in computer science or let's say engineering science or any engineering type of career, right? So always we have the blend of a problem and then the mathematical background, right? So the more math you learn, the better you will comprehend the process. That's given, that's at least was it with my own experience. At some point, you might actually feel that you don't need these type of maths, but it becomes actually very handy for if you involve into more complex type of research problems. So yes, and actually the part that is right now the AI community is struggling is the explainability, right? So there are several pillars to that explainability. When it comes to explainability, people have some sort of understandings. Sorry for that. Just give me a second. They have certain type of understanding. So sorry, I need to actually quit my cell phone. Sorry for that. The explainability is one of the key points nowadays that our community is dealing with. And actually, when it comes to explainability nowadays, what I see that it actually, if you can provide some mathematical insight to the problem, that's way appreciated for sure, and actually goes a long way. So yeah.
Thank you, Mahdi. There are a lot of questions in the chat, so if you saw questions that you can answer, feel free to just answer it in the chat.
Yeah, there are two questions addressed to me. So one of them was asked that when do we hire? So how do they know that we hire every January? We post the advertising posted during the January and the February timeframe. We usually do this through the engineering science, computer science, and electrical and computer engineering, as well as sometimes mechanical and industrial engineering. The undergraduate office announcements. So feel free to contact, ECE, computer science and engineering science programs during January and February timeframe. So this usually we advertise it through Multimedia Lab at ECE. The lab is supervised by Professor Konstantinos Plataniotis, and I'm basically a research collaborator to that lab at the moment. So we have basically a consortium of a project that it comes from the collaborating people from Huron Digital Pathology, University of Waterloo, University of Toronto, several different hospitals, including myself right now at Concordia. There was the second question was asked that, what are the recent progress and major challenges in computational pathology? I would probably put it into a more generalized type of answering this question, so it becomes useful to do to more audiences. So computational pathology is just one one part of the medical imaging. So it's like the bigger umbrella is the medical imaging. So medical imaging and the AI practitioners nowadays, what usually they do, they use off-the-shelf solutions to take the algorithm or the backbone models to fit into their data. So that goes, that gives you a certain mileage, but not really that much. So if you really want to bring additive value to the field, the challenge that probably most of the medical imaging or medical healthcare applications dealing is to develop the model that it's tailored for the or basically the theoretical model, the fundamental, the deep learning and the computer vision. In my case, a computer vision, but it could be actually more specifically to that problem, so it can better represent, becomes more efficient, and so on. So I would say it's mainly the development of the algorithm, the algorithms and the representational learning problems that our society really needs to look into those things to become more handy in these applications, because they are different when it comes to other data such as general computer vision data.
Thank you, Madi. And thank you for all the great questions in the chat. It's 12:33, so we'll try to answer 2 more questions. Is that okay for the panelists? Okay, awesome. So the next question, let's see. It's from an incoming Master of Engineering students. So I have my undergrad degree in mechanical engineering with relatively not too much experience in programming, because all my previous jobs were related to mechanical or civil engineering. As an ML engineer or data scientist, to what extent do you have to do coding compared to software engineer or developers? Also, how much statistical knowledge do you need? Does advanced statistical knowledge benefits you a lot?
I can jump in to take this one, or at least give my take on it, and then I'd love to hear other opinions. But one thing to keep in mind with ML engineering and data scientists, what I found now being in the field, is that they can sort of very broad titles for different streams to go in. So, you can think of it, there's more things along like data engineer. ML engineer to me is very much aligned with something like ML ops or ML ops engineering. I would say if your goal is to go down that road to do more building up pipelines, implementing, deploying ML solutions, that is very much heavy programming focused, where you're going to have to kind of know some of those traditional software engineering concepts as well, on top of your knowledge of machine learning frameworks and deep learning frameworks, things of that nature. When thinking of a data scientist, more so those roles are probably aligned with doing more of the modeling experimentation, where you'll still need to be able to program and have reliable code, But I think that's maybe where knowledge of the statistical knowledge is going to be more useful, where you're actually implementing more different types of algorithms, doing exploratory data analysis, experimentation. So keep that in mind, that the role, if you want to be involved in the machine learning or data science field, it is quite broad, where you can kind of, different areas are requiring different skill sets. So maybe do a little bit of your research there, figure out what is best for you. And I think that'll help you align with what skills are going to be needed. Yeah.
Thank you, Milan. And our last questions, I'll try to combine two questions. What would you say is certifications or are more valuable in this field or projects? And also there's a questions about master's degree. Let's say, would you recommend doing a master or grad program in ML or in the domain? So do you recommend certifications or projects or doing master's degree?
I can take on at least the stuff around certifications and projects. So what I found, myself personally, I've gone for a few certifications in my current role, specifically cloud platform, being able to use things like Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform, AWS. I say that because a lot of the work I do with variety of different clients, it is about deploying machine learning models and building solutions on top of these existing platforms. So having certifications, one, it teaches you how to use the tools, and two, it does give greater confidence when dealing with clients that you have some sort of baseline knowledge that they're entrusting with you. So I found that certifications help there. I wouldn't say, I wouldn't compare them with projects to say one should replace the other. I think certifications help, but they're not everything. I would still be doing projects because I think projects are sort of at the core of you being able to distill a lot of that information and understanding what's going on behind the scenes. So I'll leave that. And then maybe Maddie, if you want to take on or give your thoughts to that as well, especially stuff around the masters.
Sure. So I'm reading the question that if we eventually want to use the ML in another domain, let's say pathology, would you recommend doing a master's or grad program in ML or in the domain? The good thing about especially the UofT is that you get a lot of tons of opportunities to involve with a lot of research lab to see if you like the topic or not, right? So I would definitely recommend you to do a lot of research collaboration with the research labs and try to diversify this. And then if you see this synergy, if you see the, you're really interested into that, yes, definitely master's and PhD in this field it goes a long way. Maybe if I back up, when we look into the, the current deep learning, the AI development, we have mainly two pillars. Probably I can borrow some words from Andrew Nang. We have the data-centric models, the data-centric design, and the model-centric design. So the model-centric designs are referred to developing the backbone of the, the optimization algorithm, machine learning models to represent the data, right? So that's the model-centric design. The data-centric design is that, especially when it comes to the field of medical or any other type of the field, that we have the data, how the data should be really need to be represented, right? Needs to be collected with the domain expert knowledge, and then you need to develop the appropriate model design for that to represent that data, right? To perhaps to develop a certain application of mine. So enrolling into a master's and PhD would give you the opportunity to have hands-on experience on both the data-centric and the model-centric design. So hopefully becomes a useful product. The products in our field in computational pathology is the computer-aided diagnostic. We call it the CAD systems. So it can actually assist the medical doctors in diagnosing cancers tissues, so it can expedite their workflow. So to come a long way like that, you really need to do a lot of things to prepare the data, to work on the machine learning model designs that fits that type of the data, and so on.
Yeah, thank you, Mari, for answering the master questions, and thank you, Milan, for answering the certificate and project questions. I probably shouldn't try to combine the two questions, but yeah, thank you both for answering them. And yeah, I see Thomas also share an internship opportunity. Thanks very much. And it's 12:41, so we'll probably need to wrap up. Thank you all the panelists for staying 10 minutes extra. And if the audience wants to connect with you, would you guys prefer LinkedIn, or can we share your email with the students?
I'll type my email in the chat so people can connect.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm okay with either or, and I'll put my LinkedIn and email in the chat. So yeah, please feel free to connect.
Yes, me too. Both emails, LinkedIn should be fine.
Thank you so much. And with that, we'll wrap up today's events. Thank you so much for joining us. UTMIST also have various project opportunity. I think there will be a Zoom meeting for the project next weekend. So feel free to join us, and you can find us on Discord, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or send us an email. Yeah, we are everywhere. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you guys next time.